What's up YouTube? Today I bring to you an alternative to Omniscience that I discovered. I do know that Matto was playing this build for a while, which is deck stacking Spectral Throw. And he actually league started this build, but I don't think he actually league started it with the build just died. With the intention that the deck stacking mod was going to be introduced on the boots with the new Sentinel League. But basically, this build allows you to reach an amazing amount of damage that you normally would not be able to. As you can see here, this guy is just destroying Kostas, kind of. Well, he's destroying Kostas as well as Spectral Throw can. And usually, it would be near impossible to see someone do Wave 30 Simulacrum on Spectral Throw really easily, especially at how early of a stage this video was originally recorded. So basically what this is that he is using the new deck stacking mod, which is on boots, and the boots provides you 2 to 4 cold damage per 10 decks, and you can stack this with the mod on the weapon. So each 10 decks can give you 4 to 8 cold damage instead of 2 to 4. So what this means is that this effectively doubles your base damage. This mod is also found on Int Stacking and for Strength Stacking for lightning damage and fire damage respectively. So I'm going to go over some of the builds that takes advantage of this new Sentinel mod, what these new Sentinel mods actually do, and if this actually has any shakeup for the future meta. So with the Sentinel League, they allowed us to get some new mods that would normally never be able to be found on certain items. So for boots, for instance, you can see here, you can get 1 to 5 lightning damage to attacks per 10 intelligence. For dex boots, you can get 2 to 4 cold damage to attacks per 10 dex. And then for strength boots, you can get 2 to 4 fire damage to attacks per 10 strength. And then for belts, you can get magic utility flask applied to you have 20 to 25% increased effect. And this is actually kind of interesting because this actually allows you to get pretty close to a Mage Blood belt. Mage Blood gives you 95% increased effect. And this mod here, combined with another belt mod, could allow you to get like a third of the power of a Mage Blood effectively. You can also get increased effect of your marks. And then this is the big one here is that you can get endurance charges, frenzy charges, and power charges on rings. You can recombine these with synthesized bases, allowing you to get 2 frenzy charges or 2 power charges or 2 endurance charges on the rings. So the main thing for this video is that you can get another Int Stacking, Deck Stacking, and Strength Stacking mod on boots. And this is for boots only. So this is actually kind of interesting. There's already Strength Stacking mod on boots on Replica Alberon. So it seems like GGG likes to pigeonhole people into having the stacking mod be on boots. And this can be found with their unique design. And as I said earlier, you are able to get additional frenzy power and endurance charge on rings. And this creates areas where occultist power charge stacking or something like that are incredibly strong this league and much stronger than before. So you might wonder, why does this even affect Omni and how does Omni play into all of this? So right now, Omni, I think, is relatively cheap, right? It's going to be a lot more affordable, I'm pretty sure. I'm not really sure how much it is. I haven't really seen how much Omni is in quite a few days. But if I had to guess, I'm going to say like 30x, right? That sounds about right. Wait, so I obviously put in something weird. Oh, I put the gem level, so make sure you clear the search filters. So Omni's like 5 exalts. That's not too bad. 5 exalts seems about... Wait, it's 55 exalts? Wait, it's 57 exalts? It's this expensive still? Okay, so you can see here, this is why it's important to have an alternative to Omniscience because it's just so expensive. I did not really think it was still at 60 exalts. I thought more and more people would be killing the bosses, so it would be a lot cheaper. But basically, attribute stacking builds cannot use Omni as it converts all of the attributes to Omniscience. If you look at it right here, it says that attribute... modifiers the attributes apply to Omniscience instead. So what this means is you cannot be Omniscience and stack attributes. So mods like 1 to 5 lightning damage to attacks per 10 int that you would find on the boots or wand will not work if you use Omniscience. So this means that since you're not able to have Omniscience work, you are able to have this extra Sentinel mod on boots, and this effectively doubles your base damage. And I actually didn't really believe it, but it is really just that crazy. So right here, I have an Int Stacking Deadeye. This is the #1 POB right now of an Int Stacking or Power Siphon. It has 62.6 million DPS. You take off his wonderful boosts, and it goes to 31.5 million. So effectively, it gets you double the amount of base damage. And base damage is pretty much where you scale all your damage from attack speed to lightning damage to pen. And this really leads to deck stacking, Int Stacking, doing nearly double damage compared to last league, and it narrows the gap with Omniscience. Omniscience is pretty much an amulet that gives you around 2 to 2.5 times more damage at the bare minimum if you build it correctly. So with this new boot mod, it actually incredibly narrows the gap between Dex and Int Stacking builds with Omni builds. So now it's kind of important to kind of look at some of these new builds that you might see and what builds could actually take advantage of this. So we go to Sentinel League and we go check out my favorite build, which is Spectral Throw. Spectral Throw is actually at 0.4% played. Now the important thing about Spectral Throw is that if you can play Spectral Throw, you can also play Venom Gyre. So this guy's PoB is around 7.9 million. Now a lot of people always ask me, why is the damage so low for a lot of claw attack builds? And the reason being is that PoE Ninja doesn't do a great job of having the config right for Nightblade. So if you don't have Nightblade checked and you don't have Elusive checked, then that's where all the damage goes. You also don't get Frenzy charges for some strange reason. And since this guy is running maximum distance, you can see here, after changing those three things, make sure this affects Nightblade. You get Frenzy charges from either Mark on Hit Mastery, or you can get it from Blood Rage, and then this projectile distance is where you'll stand maximum range for Far Shot, which is a node that's taken over here. So you can see here, 30.5 million DPS is pretty insane. You can pretty much plug this build in and play it anywhere with this amount of damage. Now you can see that Lightning Strike, if you do decide to use it, would have around the same effect. So you can technically use this archetype and pretty much play any attack-based skill that has projectile scaling. So we just remove Bone Chill and do Awaken Multi-Strike or something like that. You can see here 72 million damage. Multi-Strike actually does not really scale the projectiles, I think. Or does it? Oh, it does scale the projectiles. It's kind of weird. I thought it did not scale it, but anyhow, you can see here 72 million damage on the Lightning Strike projectiles. It's absolutely insane. And this just shows you that the damage is there for deck stacking. If you pick the Berserker, getting 70 mil on projectiles is quite a hard task. So deck stacking is very, very strong. So if you look at the Claw, you have flat cold damage, attack speed, and a deck stacking mod, and you multi-modded it. So this is not even like perfect gear. And this is pretty much just a life suppression shield with percent dex implicit, fractal dots with more dex scaling with elemental damage per 10 dex, and then 40% multi if your dex is higher than your int and it has sniper's mark on it. And this is another percent dex chest that's elder based, and more dex scaling. And then here's the boots. It has 50 dex, it has life, and then it also has 2 to 4 cold damage to attacks per 10 dexterity. And this is a synthesized amulet. So most builds will always use a synthesized amulet and synthesized belt for the percent dex and percent dex over here. And then you have some rings, omni rings, with a bunch of stats everywhere. So overall, he has around 1700 dex. And this is actually a pretty good setup. So you might be wondering what happens if you actually put in Omniscience for this build. Let's see what happens. You just swap in Omniscience. It's actually a huge damage loss somehow, even at 1500 Omniscience, because you lose all of your flat damage. Well, it's not exactly a one-to-one thing because the flat damage is just gone, but you can't really do that, so it's a bad example. But basically, you get an insane amount of damage from this archetype, but I do think that this archetype has a lot of potential, and you can also play Venom Gyre, and you get around 40 mil DPS with this setup, and it opens up options for Venom Gyre that aren't really traditional strength stacker, and it is higher DPS than Omni Spectral Throw after playing around with it a little bit more. But basically, the main problem with this setup is that the build is kind of squishy, but you could definitely make it tankier. Main reason why it's so squishy is because the guy has negative 60 chaos res and no armor. So when you look at the calculations for the maximum hit taken for chaos is 2800 because 60 res, negative 60 res, and maximum hit for fizz is 5000. Now, the interesting thing about PoB, a lot of people don't understand, is that the maximum hit taken is not really the maximum hit taken, it's the second minimum. So sometimes you might have a really high effective maximum hit taken, but you actually have a really low actual maximum hit taken because it takes your second highest one. So just something to keep in mind. Next up, we have Int Stacking Wander. Int Stacking Wander is another build where you can use the Int Stacking mod on the wand and your boots, like the claw from the last build. And removing the boots, as I showed you earlier, does make you do half your damage. Now, interesting to note is that the current Int Stacking meter boots that are in Sentinel League is this pair right here. And this pair is actually not the right base technically, but if you want to make a more defensive character, it does give you ailment immunity and some action speed. If you want to make a more offensive character, you should be making it on a crocodile pair of boots, which are called Storm Rider. And the Storm Rider boots gives you accuracy per 1 to 6 lightning damage, or lightning damage per 200 accuracy rating. So last league's #1 instacker actually used Storm Rider boots, so maybe one day someone will craft it on a pair of Storm Rider boots. And what this means with the new Int Stacking mod on the boots is that it raises the ceiling of one of the most min-maxable builds. Every time you look at instackers or you talk to people about instackers, they will tell you immediately there's no such thing as a budget instacker. They're not really wrong in that sense, in that instackers just cost a fortune. So let's go see over here. #1 instacker currently is at 60 mil DPS, and they're actually a Deadeye, because I'm pretty sure, yeah, this guy is actually using Doriani's prototype, which is kind of weird. But as you can see here, they have the deck stacking mod on the boots. And if you remove these boots, his damage would probably go down to like 25 million or something. So pretty crazy mod, and it's nice to see how much damage that people will be able to get at the end with this new mod. Now, there is something else that's really interesting about instackers is that nowadays you can actually get insane defensive scaling with the Vol Regalia with 100% global defenses that you can get onto the new chest with Recombiner. So you can see here, this is a Vol Regalia, and this actually has 115% increased global defenses. So you have 800 ES, and this can push your instacker to around like 15 to 20k ES because this mod is just that insane for Energy Shield. So Int Stacking Wander, especially with the new Recombiner mods, most will make it so that it can compete with Omni builds again in terms of the damage that it can provide. Now, lastly, I do think that this is a pretty nice change in that we will be able to see a lot higher damage. So like all of these builds, 162 million, 100 mil, you can at least expect to see like nearly 200 mil on a lot of the top instackers or Power Siphon. Well, this person is a beast. And so his build is 1.1 billion, but this is an accuracy stacker, which doesn't really benefit from these mods at all, because an accuracy stacker actually has very, very little intelligence or any stats. Now, Omniscience, I still think is miles stronger due to how much resistance it provides. It's really hard to beat Omni because of the gear flexibility you have from how much resistance you gain. Because with 1,200 Omni, you get 120 all res, which is an insane amount of resistances. And in this video, I didn't really go over strength stacking with fire damage, but you can use a Brutus Lead Sprinkler, or you can actually craft a weapon with 2 to 4 fire damage per 5 or 10 strength. And I do think that this mod will make more and more people play the instacker because you can easily access double damage from having an extra double base damage. But in the end, instackers are still a very, very, very expensive build that has insane gear requirements. So I don't think that many people will do instacking, but I do think that deck stacking especially can have a lot of potential if people want a more glass cannon playstyle. But thanks for watching, everyone. I hope that this video gave you some hope maybe to try out to play a different archetype than Omni if you're not so rich with deck stacking. And you can try it out with a lot of different skills. But thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you find more Mirrors, Exalts, and Mage Bloods than me. And see you next time. Bye!